I am Ann-Peggy Divine. Welcome to the Divine Design, the podcast where we unfold heaven on earth and reframe spirituality and theology for a new cosmic era. Your journey on human evolution and integration of your divine design starts here. Welcome, Dag O, Hessen, to this Divine Design podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, happy to join there.
Yeah, I met you a week ago where you had a lecture about bird life and the changes we see in bird, and I was so fascinated by what you said and asked if you could do a podcast. And I don't watch the Norwegian television so much, but I have heard that a lot of people say, "Oh, he is often on television." So, and you have a deep expertise in what we can see from the bird life about the changes that humans have made on Earth. So maybe you can say something about yourself and then about the bird life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, normally I don't really work professionally with birds, although I'm a biologist, a professor in biology at the University of Oslo, and also head of the Center for Biogeochemistry in the Anthropocene. Immense complex name, but we are working with carbon cycling and climate and the combination with climate and loss of nature, and making models. So this is pure science. But aside from that, I also have had a long life and long-term interest in nature. That's why I became a biologist, obviously, and also a passion for nature. And eventually, I also started writing popular books about nature and climate and well, what we should do and why things are like they are. And this book, which is not specifically a bird book per se, but I use birds here as a lens to the landscape changes that have happened worldwide during the past 200 years. The reason why I choose 200 years is a bit arbitrary, but I have a stop at 1825, then 1925, and then when the book was released in 2025. So these three stopovers using the birds can tell pretty much how dramatically we have changed this planet, and that's hence the term Anthropocene, the era of the humans, which partly reflects how dramatically we have changed both climate and the surface of nature. So, but of course, I also have a passion for birds. So it's a mixture of birds per se, but by and large, it's about birds uh, somehow being the long-term lens for telling these changes.
Yeah, I remember you shared that 2.9 billion birds have died since 1970, and it was wow, it is enormous numbers of birds that just have, we don't have them anymore.
No, and I mean these numbers are shocking when you read them and see them. And yeah, the number of birds have been declining.
Yeah.
The species loss is not that dramatic yet, but of course we lose species also.
Yeah.
But it's by and large the number, and not only of birds, it's about mammals, fishes, all kind of insects, not the least.
Yeah.
The loss of insects is partly the reason why we lose birds. And the reason is not that we do not love nature or love these birds. It's because we become more and more humans, and we claim more and more land, and we convert wetlands and bogs and yeah, productive areas for insects and birds into croplands and forest lands, etc.
Yeah.
And of course, the numbers are really dramatic. So if you look at the number of or the weight proportion of weight for vertebrates, that's animals with backbones like ourselves. Um, Humans make up 36%, or domestic animals make up 60%, meaning that what is left for wildlife, wild vertebrates, is no more than 4%. And it's, of course, the same with birds, that there's been a dramatic replacement of domestic birds or wild bird with domestic birds.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I remember also what you told about wetlands, because I think it is so easy to think wetland. Okay, we don't. It doesn't have any meaning by itself, so we can just assume and use it to with our thoughts build something. And when we do, we actually change the climate so much that uh, yeah, it come back to us. And also what you said, remember waking up a day and there were no bird singing,
Mm.
totally quiet. And I love nature, all of us love nature, but I have reflected very deep on that, because I love the birds, and it's kind of all because it is therapy, it is natural therapy, it is kind of, yeah. And if that suddenly you wake up one day and it's no birds there, because we have taken so much advantage of Mother Earth that no more birds. So yeah, I have done deep reflection on that, and it's like wow, just to put our mind into that, to understand this is what we do.
Yeah, fortunately, it's very unlikely that all birds will disappear. They are survivors, so there will likely always be birds around as long as there are humans, at least. But as we said, the numbers have been declining, and it's really scary. Also, the term "silent spring," which was the title of Rachel Carson's very important, influential, and seminal book that came in the 60s. What could be more scary than a
Yeah,
silent spring?
yeah, yeah,
So, and while it's not totally silent, it has become more silent. And again, this is not because we don't love birds or hate them or that we don't love nature. It's simply that this happens day to day. We take one piece of nature here, one piece of nature there.
yeah,
It doesn't seem like much, but this is what sums up to the massive losses of nature and changes of nature. And that's something I work with professionally, this importance of nature for taking up CO2. So it's this very tight link between climate and loss of nature
yeah,
that really people are not fully aware of yet. So 50% of human emissions of CO2, which today creates the problems with global warming, and all that comes along with that, is taken up by nature by photosynthesis. So uh, even if you're not interested in nature for other reasons, that's a very good argument for taking well care of the forest and bogs and wetlands and everything that take up and sequester carbon.
yeah. And you also mentioned, you asked us a question, and you asked us, do you know what almost the most significant animal or species are in Norway right now? And a lot of us thought, and no one could say what you were thinking about. You were thinking about krill, but you had another name for krill.
Yeah, well, actually, it's a small relative of krill. Krill is also very abundant and very important, but the most important animal, well, it's a subjective claim, of course, but
Yeah,
in
yeah,
terms of ecosystem impacts, and biomass. It's a small copepod, a crustacean zooplankton that is called, we call it rauåte in Norwegian. It's Calanus finmarchicus.
yeah,
And it's also a kind of uh, bird or canary in the coal mine type of organism, because what we see today, the reason why we also lose massive amounts of seabirds is partly because of overfishing, but today it seems to be more that the ocean are heating up. We have heat waves and warmer ocean, and that means that these very important key species in marine ecosystems is moving northward,
yeah,
and that shifts the entire ecosystem in the marine system, affecting both fish but also seabirds, of course. So we have experienced the silent spring also in many of the uh, hatcheries along the coast, the big sea cliffs that teemed with life some decades ago, but now is most of the life has gone there as well. So that's also a pretty scary thing to experience the silent spring in the bird cliffs.
Yeah.
And part of that relates to this very important, very tiny, but still very important small animals. So it's often the small animals or the small creatures that are the most important.
Yeah, and it's not natural to go, okay, are they so important? But when you put it in that perspective, it's like, wow, because we see it. We call it here in similar, it's like tardelus.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So a lot of kids learn very often because we are next to the seaside. It's like, oh, this tardelus. So it's kind of innocent, but it's kind of, but it is so important also.
They are so abundant, and
Yeah.
yeah, they are very important from an ecosystem perspective. And many of these species are what we call keystone species. They are important for a range of fishes and seabirds. So yeah, it's not always the obvious and the large charismatic animals that are most important. But of course, they are important too.
Yeah, and I would ask you, do you have some suggestion? But just when you talk for an hour about this, it made me realize, wow, it was kind of an awakening into the bird life. Even though I love birds and kind of see them as I speak to them, kind of when they and I speak back to them. But that is another way. But when you really told the global what is happening to the bird, it's kind of awakening for me. So just us speaking about it, um, this I think this is helpful to understand. And also, you are in an organization. I have gone into this organization just to have an awareness about how important this is.
Yeah, I think it's important first to start with the facts about this.
Yes.
Yeah, there is a massive decline in birds. It's not the end of the world. It's not the end of humanity. So it's not a catastrophe in that sense. But it's really it's a risky thing. And besides, I mean, nature have its own rights to be there. So it's really an alarming thing in many ways. And of course, we will be deprived of the birds singing in spring, so it means something to humans as well, and we like to see the birds. So nature is becoming poorer in many regards. But to tell these facts, because that's the kind of blindness that we don't see these changes from year to year, or even we don't reflect over them during the change during our lifetime. But when you see the numbers and have the statistics, then you are realize that, well, this is alarming and this cannot continue. And then comes the solution, which of course is never easy, never straightforward. But I think it's very important to tell that each of us has a possibility and a responsibility, which is a good thing to have to do something about this.
Yeah.
And again, this is related, this is where climate meets loss of nature, because today climate change is also a key driver for loss of nature, loss of insects, loss of birds, whatever.
Yeah.
And the point is that if we, everybody, each and all of us do something, that will help.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
uh, but it's very easy to say that, well, this is so overwhelming, both when it comes to loss of nature and climate and the threat over the rainforest, etc. So there is really nothing I can do. I should just continue as I've always done. So, and nobody are perfect, but to make small changes in your
Yeah.
life
Yeah.
that probably could even increase the life quality,
Yeah.
quality of life, will also have strong benefits to nature and climate. So if everyone does this and have this awareness,
Yeah.
then I think it's at least part of the solution.
Yes. And another thing that fascinated me, because you spoke about the bird's natural intelligence. You have studied it, and you gave an example of the cuckoo.
Mm.
It's like because they have their babies all around Norway, and even though they are not with their parents, they find their way to the same place in Africa. Can you say a little bit about this natural intelligence that we see in bird life, that is in animal life, and yeah,
Yeah, because that's also part of nature to be fascinated
Yeah,
and it's not only what we can or learn, but also everything we don't really understand fully. So, of course, we know to a large extent how birds and other animals can migrate over large distances. I
yeah,
mean, it's quite remarkable that these tiny birds can go from northern Norway down to the southern tip of Africa. They can do this every year, many of them,
yeah,
and they find their way.
yeah,
They know how to navigate. So that's really puzzling um, and really fascinating. And we know part of the story. Of course, they birds migrate and navigate by the stars. They can follow coastlines, mountains, etc. But I also have this property to sense the magnetic fields in Earth, so they know in many ways they can see the north-south, but they can also be. They have been done a number of experiments where young birds have been replaced, for instance, thousands or hundreds of kilometers to the east or west, and then released. Still, they are able to find their way to the spot where they are supposed to spend the winter time. But of course, the cuckoo is specific because there you really know that it had learned nothing from its parents because
yeah,
the parents are of a different species.
yeah,
So I think there are so many ways and so many aspects of nature, not only birds, but all parts of nature that is fascinating, and we don't really fully understand. But what we have learned is that animals, by and large, are smarter than we have thought. They look more like us. They have some of the same structures in the brain. They have some of the same single substances, or many of them. So clearly, advanced animals can feel joy and sorrow and happiness and many of the things that we have. Probably not at the same level, but they are more advanced and can do things that we didn't believe they could before.
yeah. And I have spoken with people and go into because the skills that we see in bird life and in animals, we have them ourselves, but we are so busy in our minds, so we have a natural intelligence ourselves. So because we when we saw this tsunami and catastrophe in 2004 in where was it, the tsunami that killed a lot of people, I don't remember where it was, but anyhow, the animals noticed beforehand, so they went up to the mountain, and the but people didn't. Some people, the indigenous, understand it, and a lot of people lost their life, but they knew beforehand what was coming, so they was kind of connected to Earth in another way that we are. We have almost lost this connection to Mother Earth to listen to, because there are a lot of signal all the time. So we call this is like the bird intelligence, the animal intelligence, the same intelligence that we can find in our human body.
Mm. Yeah, of course, we have rudiments of it. We have instincts, and we feel fear when we experience dangerous situation, etc., and dangerous animals, and so we have some rudiments of these capabilities that birds and animals have. And we likely also have this capacity to have a kind of sense of north and south,
Yes.
although there are obviously huge individual differences. Some people cannot tell if they should go to the left or right when they exit a building.
Yeah,
But
that's
there
true.
are interesting studies of indigenous people living, for instance, in dense forest, where you have no way you can orient yourself to not even to the sky. Some things sometimes if it's very dense forest canopy. And you have no mountains, but even without GPS or a compass, they know instinctively which way to take and can find the way back to the village of long distances through really dense forest. So clearly there are remains of this, and probably it can be trained as well.
Yep.
But I think most of us human people living in cities have lost that, plus a number of other capabilities that we once had.
Yeah.
But of course, these things have followed the animal life through evolution, so it makes sense that we not only have the same signals in the brains, but also the same capabilities to some extent to orient ourselves towards north or south or east-west.
Yeah, I had my grandfather was a fisherman. He was on the ocean all the time, and he communicated with the weather. So, and he knew where the fish was, and he knew what day he couldn't go on the ocean. And a lot of people said, "Well, you are the lucky one." We call it hull. So he always knew where the fish were. He communicated with the weather, and he was a wealthy man because he was so grounded, and he could read Mother Earth, the weather, and all this. And that is kind of what the indigenous people did. So he was born this way. He started when he was a young boy, kind of communicating with the weather and understand, well, it comes from the west, from the north, and all this. So we have it in us and we can learn. But the fishermen in Norway, because we have had a lot of fishermen in Norway, they, for me, it feels like they had this compass inside of them. But then we went very technical and go into the instrument and almost gave away the natural intelligence that we have inside.
Yeah, of course, today you have echo sounders, which are very sophisticated and can track even individual fishes.
Yeah.
And we have GPS, so in many ways you can cope without these natural instincts. But you're right. Again, I think there was huge individual differences, but there are people that clearly are quite talented in knowing something. They cannot really explain why, but they
Yeah.
know that. But there are some thing that has been communicated also. Everyone knows that when there is a northerly wind, there is no use trying to fish neither in lakes or
Yeah.
rivers or the sea, which seems to hold true in some way, but it has no obvious scientific explanation. But this is something that's communicated, so everyone that do fishing know this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Except if you are on a big trawler, of course, then you can always detect the fish deep down there. But if you're an angler, there is no reason to try this in when there is a northerly cold wind.
Yeah. Can I ask you the reason why you went into biology and trying to understand? What was your, what did spark you into this fascination?
Yeah, I asked myself also, why are some people born with this deep love and fascination for nature? So I think part was that I had always had a very curious mind. I wanted to know how things are put together, how things work, how the nature works,
Yes, yes.
laws of nature, so to speak. So that was the scientific part of me. But I also have this very, yeah, deep passion for nature as long as I can remember. I think I also had a couple of influential teachers that put me in the right direction. My
Yeah.
parents, of course, also took me into the forest and mountains, but nothing more than others. So I cannot really explain it, but I always had this really deep passion for nature combined with this scientific insights or wish to understand,
Yeah.
which is, I think, a fortunate combination. I'm at least very happy that I followed my instinct in that
Yes.
sense and
Yes.
ended up as a biologist. But later on, I think my main motivation has been to protect the same nature and also work with climate and climate changes. So it has shifted a bit from pure curiosity and science, curiosity-driven motivation towards a deep wish to take care of this nature and well, save the planet,
Yeah.
put it that way for coming generation. So that's my main motive today, and also my main motivation for writing books like the one I talked about using birds to explain what's going on.
And what are your thoughts about Greta Thunberg? Because she is one example, but there are several young people that is raising their hand about climate change and yeah, wanting us to go deeper into the same as you do. But they do it in another way. Kind of, she was very young starting this wave movement.
Yeah, she was one of a kind, or is one of a kind girl, of course, or person. she had a tremendous impact, but unfortunately, it seems that, like this is leveling off. Young people are not that interested or concerned about climate. I mean, you shouldn't be that concerned that you give up, but again, a certain concern is something that we all should have when it comes to both climate and loss of nature and the combined effect of these two. But it seems like it's so we should have more Greta Thunbergs, obviously. And it also shows that individual people can have a remarkable impact, although, of course, very few can have the impact that Greta Thunberg have had. But it shows also this interesting. I work with tipping point in ecosystem, the risk of tipping point, like the Gulf Stream could end, the Greenland ice sheet could turn into irreversible meltdown, the permafrost could thaw with massive release of greenhouse gases. The Amazon could hit a tipping point and end up as savanna. But we also have this societal positive tipping point where sufficient many people are joining a new trend. Either it is technology or more normative, then you can suddenly make changes that were seen as impossible on beforehand. The history is full of this. So I think if you get the kind of Greta Thunberg movement that rise to a certain level, it can really um, have a long-lasting and permanent positive impact on young people and hopefully also grown-ups. So yeah, at least she has had a huge impact, but
Yeah.
again, it is very difficult to have this intense attention all the time
Yeah,
towards one
but
problem. And today, of course, we have uh, wars. We have the terrible wars in the Middle East, in Ukraine, well, in Africa, and there are so many things to be concerned with. And people tend to be most concerned with here and now, and of course, the content of their own wallet and their own health, which is understandable. But we also need to have this long-lasting perspective, what's good for this planet on 100 or 200 or even 1,000-year perspective.
yes, I agreed. Okay, so the invitation is actually to have like more Greta Thunbergs and the movement to kind of start again. But I also asked you this perspective. You said because there are so many crises around the world, so much. So this movement kind of it goes under all the big crises.
Yeah, although it's clearly the most important, but it seemed to be it's more diffuse, of course, and not as obvious as wars and
Yeah.
economy. And I mean, if you're a young person today in Norway, to get your own apartment is almost hopeless. So, of course, it's easy to understand why the main concern is in the short term and personal interest. But I think at the same time we need to be concerned with the future. And again, my one of my key points is that everyone can do something, and it doesn't conflict with the quality of life. Very much of this boils down to overconsumption or the consumerism in our society. So if you can reduce the overconsumption a bit, I mean, likely our lives will be better, and it will be huge relief for the planet if everyone can do a bit of this. So the message is that everyone can do something, and I think that's a good thing that we have a responsibility and we can in fact do something.
Yeah, to go deep into Greta Thunberg's story because what one person can do, even though this was a big wave, but I see that I haven't seen it this last years, but it was several other in Norway that tried to do the same as Greta. No one got the attention like she did, but everything counts, kind of.
Yeah, and of course, very few can be Greta Thunberg. Probably only she can be Greta Thunberg in that sense. And I mean, we cannot expect that everyone should be Greta Thunberg lookalikes, but everyone can do something, as I said, and everyone can follow the advices of people like her when there are good advices. So everyone can be part of this huge movement that is needed.
Yeah.
And again, this does not conflict the quality of life, and it doesn't mean that we should go back to how this planet looked like 100 years ago, but we should get rid of the overconsumption, and we need to take a step back and ask ourselves, what's important in my life, and uh, how can I get a good life that not conflicts with a good life of those that shall live here 100 years from now.
Yeah. And what advice do you give to your student? Because you have had several students in this team, and do you have example of some of the movements or the steps your students have taken towards helping to raise consciousness in this area?
Yeah, I hope so at least. And I mean, as a university teacher and professor, I always start the courses by motivating the students and say, this is important.
Yeah.
First of all, the insights and knowledge and science is important because it tells you what's going on and why this and that is important. Why is climate change happening?
Yep.
And why is it dangerous and so forth. But then also to motivate that by learning this, you can also do this and use these insights to the best for society wherever you end up in society. Even if private end up in private business, you can use these insights. So again, for my own sake, I hope to be part of the same movement and do my share of moving the planet in a slightly better direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I just say that because we have Greta Thunberg as one example, but also hearing about other examples, what do they do, can inspire us because it can be easy to think, what can little me do? And one thing is what Greta did, but there are many other things, as you say, to do. So it's kind of finding examples of what more can we do instead of just being occupied in, like you said, just being worried, I need a house. Because in Norway, we have a mentality that you need a house, you need an apartment. So that's the kind of crisis. I have reflected on this because this is not the team in a lot of other countries that the first thing you think about, you have to have your own apartment. I don't know why we have this paradigm in this in Norway and this Scandinavian country, but I see it in my daughter. She's 20 years. She said, I have one goal. It is to get my own apartment. So she is
Yeah.
right in that. So that's her
Same with
goal.
my kids as well. So, and as you say, it's something unique to Norway that we need to own the house, we need to own our own car, we need to own our own cabin or cabins, actually. So
Actually,
it's this obsession with owning things and having things and having goods rather than reflecting what is a good life. And this creates also a life on a treadmill that we are running faster and faster in this treadmill, which is not a recipe for a happy and good life.
no.
So, but it's difficult because you have to be part of society and you want to do what everyone else is doing. But I think the point is that to do something is not very difficult, actually. I mean, obviously, what Greta Thunberg has done for sacrifices is something you cannot expect others to do. But if you recycle your things, if you think about what do I really need? Do I need a new mobile phone right now? Yeah,
Do I
consume
need a
your
house? Do I need a house? New
house.
apartment?
But I mean, also, and there are many young people that have started uh, campaigns for more awareness about the loss of food.
Yeah.
I mean, waste of food and also recycling of clothes, recycling of other goods. And it's often surprising to see how fast these things can attain impressive volume. So it means something.
Yeah.
But even if you don't start the movement, you can be part of it. I think that is the issue for most of us, that we will be part in a movement, not necessarily starting it. And
Yeah.
that's something we can do every day in small scale. And again, I think it's important to stress that this does not conflict with quality of life, probably rather the opposite.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was a good point. To we don't need to start the movement, but there are already a lot of movement to find and support them because they also need support. I spoke with a friend of mine that went into, I just buy all my clothes for one company that recycle and clean wool. It was more expensive, but it is thinking and have the perspective of the whole world, not to waste so much. So I don't remember the company's name, but I remember she spoke about it, and it's like, yes, there are a lot of movements already. So to find them and support them.
Absolutely. That's a point that we all should be good followers. We do not necessarily need to be good starters, but good followers.
Yeah,
And most people don't realize that all this consumption is also the key driver for climate change.
yeah,
Because everything that is produced on this planet is basically what emits CO2, of course, together with the energy production. So if we can reduce the energy production and reduce the overuse of goods, uh, reduce the waste products, I mean, that's really will have a key impact also on climate.
yes.
Plus also, of course, on the costs for nature.
Yeah, have you reflected on the AI? Because now we are going so deep into AI, we use it for everything, and they use so much electricity, so much water. So we are kind of taking even more because we use the AI so much.
Yeah, I mean, ChatGPT consumes endless amount as the same does everything that we put in the sky,
Yeah.
uh, cat videos as we call it, and it consumes a lot of energy. So we need also more awareness of that, and probably it should also come with some costs.
Yeah.
So we see that this has a price, also a monetary price. Clearly, it has a price in terms of climate and nature. But you're right, we now see endless interest in building the data centers and even Bitcoin mining, things
Yeah.
like that,
Yeah.
which is purely speculation, which takes large areas, not only for building the factories, but also for creating energy. So if we should use green energy and put up hundreds of thousands of windmills in nature to provide energy for the data centers. I mean, that's not green policy.
No, and you talk about this when in your lecture that what this windmill, what it does to the bird life.
Yeah, it's harmful to the bird life. I mean, in principle, it's a very good invention. It's very smart and clever.
Yeah.
So I principally nothing against them. If you can put these in areas where we already have industry,
Yeah.
probably they can be put offshore as well, as long as you avoid the most bird visited areas.
Yeah.
But we cannot put everything on nice mountainous areas and coastal areas. And not only because it's harmful for the birds, it's also harmful for us because it destroys this beautiful nature that is part of our identity. And so it has a human perspective as well.
Yeah, I was traveling yesterday at work, and we have an area here. There are so many of this wind turbine, and it's like, wow! I think there were more than hundreds. So, and it's just the last 15 years they have come up. So I don't have the statistics, but there are big changes.
Yeah, these are one of the huge battles today. I would say one of the big debates. Where should we have wind turbines? How many? But it all boils down to the demand for energy. And of course, we probably we need more energy, and it's good with green energy. Of course, we don't need coal or
Yeah.
oil generated. We don't need fossil energy. So in that sense, it's good. But the point is that we cannot continue to feed that endless growth in energy demand. At some point, we need to say that, well, look here, there is nothing more. We cannot build another yeah, factory or whatever that takes this. We There has to be limits. I mean, that's the main point, that there are some limits both in terms of energy delivery and space and nature on this planet. So we cannot go beyond these limits.
Yeah, so production and economy, we have said this is the biggest value kind of, but there are deeper value of just being human, being a bird, being an animal. So to see a bigger picture.
Yeah, it's today almost everything is valued in monetary terms. Then now, of course, it will probably be for the foreseeable future, but we also need more awareness about all these other values. The intrinsic value of nature, the value that we can experience unspoiled nature, the value of the fact that there are birds around, both for the birds themselves and for us. So there is layers of values, of course, that can be added. But in the end, also this what we call the nature services that nature provides for us has a monetary value in the end. So even for those that are just concerned with the monetary values, there are good reasons to take care of nature and to curb the climate gas emissions. Because in the long term, the costs for reducing nature and having extremely high CO2 levels or methane levels or greenhouse gases, the cost of that would be tremendous.
Yeah.
But again, that's the balance that is so difficult to balance the value of the future with the value today. We have a strong tendency to discount, as it said, the value of the future, and which in principle is to say that the value of the life of a human living here 100 years from now is less than the value of our lives, which I think is not morally well justified.
Well, I was thinking about one action to take, and actually to go into the organization that you talk about, BirdLife. Just be a member and start there also, because if this expand, because I see that my family and my kids that wow, and this brochure it's like more than hundreds birds in Norway, and they, oh, this is that bird, that is that bird. So just the awareness and going into an organization as we talked. So that is one step to be a member, because yeah.
Absolutely. It's always good to do things together with others and be part of a group. That's
Yeah.
something that's deep to be. Yeah, to be a human is to be social, and we can be social also in by doing good things that we can enter organizations, either nature preserving organizations. Also, as voters, of course, it's very important when we are so lucky that we live in democracies. We should also use these insights when we vote. But I agree, being part of BirdLife Norway or a nature conserving society or yeah, what is it called? Grandparents for climate groups like that
Yeah.
that do good things together. It also creates a kind of meaning, I think.
Yeah.
After all, all humans would like to have a feeling of meaning in their life, some kind of purpose, and
Yes.
by doing this, which you know is good for yourself and good for the future, it also creates a kind of meaning in life that I think is very, very valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will share a link about some organization under this podcast. And if it is it okay that I share your email if someone wants to in have another podcast, because I think this to raise it if several people want to listen to this, because it is so many perspective into this.
Yeah, by all means, please do that.
So because you have so deep experience and you have done it for so many years, and your books, and I also will mention your books in this description. So kind of this is yeah, this is an important aspect of what is happening in the climate.
Yeah, and I think it's deeply meaningful for me as a scientist also to not only write another scientific paper, but to spend time on yeah, telling about this and communicating and raising awareness to the extent that I can do that. I think that's to me very meaningful.
Yeah, And what it did to me is it's like, wow, and sharing it. So maybe we will do a podcast in a year or two if there comes some more. But I just want to say thank you so much, Dag Hessen, for doing this podcast and raising awareness into bird life.
And thank you for inviting me to share this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Divine Design podcast with Ann-Peggy Divine. Join us next Sunday for another Heaven on Earth unfolding conversation. With grace, reverence, and unity, may the path of your divine design light the way. From the divine in us to the divine in you.